The golden year for Team USA in international competition comes to an earlier end than maybe people would have thought. I'm Mike Asti, and this is a special Team USA World Baseball Classic recap edition here of Mic Drop, brought to you by the Believe Network and available everywhere you get your podcasts, all across the United States of America and also all around the globe. And the globe is now the champion of baseball, as Venezuela is actually the champion of baseball, as they are now, for the first time in their country's history, the World Baseball Classic champion and gold medalist. And the United States wins the gold medal in men's hockey in the Olympics, in the Winter Olympics, the first for our country since 1980 in the Miracle on Ice year. The women's team wins another gold. They're familiar with it. They win another gold, both doing it over Canada, over the rival. The Paralympic hockey team wins a gold medal. And the United States baseball team loses in the championship game and finishes with just the silver medal, falling, as I said, to Venezuela 3-2 the final, the same score as when Team USA lost 3 years ago to Japan, a normal baseball power, as they won another crown. And Ohtani struck out Mike Trout to win that one in a classic. This one also another classic. Team USA didn't hit until the end, but Bryce Harper, a mammoth 2-run shot homer to tie the game, flexes, points to USA on his jersey. That was a great moment, and the vibe started to turn, and you felt like, okay, Team USA, they've had their peaks and valleys, they've had their controversies. We'll talk about all of them here on this show. Mark DeRosa has been polarizing as manager, and yet they're going to still win this thing. They're the more talented group. It's going to eventually prevail. Not so much, though, as Venezuela answered the sucker punch right in their face with one of their own. They threw a haymaker back. They scored. They did enough, and they won the game. And they absolutely deserve it. An incredible feat for that country. The first international win for Venezuela baseball since 1941 in the Amateur World Series. They've been a solid country since, even competitive in the WBC, but this is the first crown in a long time, and certainly in modern times and in the World Baseball Classic for Venezuela. And it makes you feel like, wow, that's great. Team USA should have won this. You can handle losing to Japan 3 years ago. You did win in 2017, and then it was interrupted because of COVID. Early days of the WBC, you had an older team with Ken Griffey Jr., Derek Jeter, A-Rod, etc. At the end of their career, they performed, at least Griffey and Jeter did. Griffey was tremendous in that inaugural WBC, but they didn't win it. And then it took them a while again to get their footing, also not winning it in 2009 or 2013, and having trouble even getting out of the semifinal round or even getting to the championship round. But then once they got going and these rosters were able to be more of players in their prime, younger or in their prime, like this year's Aaron Judge, Bryce Harper, Kyle Raleigh, Paul Skeens, young or in their prime. We're talking about early in their careers, not mid to late 30s, if not 40, like it was back in 2006. Roger Clemens was even on that team at the tail end. Not the case for this version now of Team USA, which is why you could argue this was the best roster, which is why you could argue that this team should have won. They didn't face Japan. They were able to get away from not having to face Japan. They lost earlier. They didn't face Dominican Republic, that's won a title that also has great players in their prime. They beat them. Controversial fashion, but they beat them to get there. And then you lose to Venezuela. So again, we're going to talk some WBC here on this edition of Mic Drop. Again, everywhere you get your podcasts, all through the United States and around the globe. And USA right now not home to the best in the world in terms of baseball. It's our sport. It's our America's pastime. We took Canada's, it's theirs in hockey, and we won it. We don't win it in baseball when we should. And now I'm going to get into why, separate from the managerial issues and not hitting enough, and then what needs to happen going forward for Team USA to get the crown back, to win it again, and to keep on winning it, and to build a dynasty in international competition like has happened on the basketball side. So, number one, and I've alluded to it, others are saying it, I wrote about it, and I will hype up my article here right now. USA needs to move on from Mark DeRosa, look to more experienced managers. Nail on the head. That's what needs to happen. Mark DeRosa's been the manager for Team USA now twice. 2 runner-up finishes. They did get to the championship game both times, but 2 runner-up finishes after winning it in 2017. 2017 was led by Jim Leland, a Hall of Fame manager that's won a World Series, that's won 1,700 plus games, that led 3 different teams to American League pennants, or to pennants, 2 in the American League and 1 in the National League. So he's been to 3 World Series, winning with the 97 Marlins. And he was older, but he won it in 2017 with a grittier team that wasn't as full of superstars, but he made all the right decisions, pressed all the right buttons, and said all the right things to cap off his legendary career. They didn't win it early on in the tournament with a much older roster. Buck Martinez, he's managed, but more of a TV personality and a broadcaster at that time. They don't get it done. And then Mark DeRosa, they get to the championship game, but these back-to-back years, these back-to-back finishes, the back-to-back tournament appearances, now losing in the championship game as the runner-up. So they need to look to the Jim Lelands of the world and not the Mark DeRosas of the world, to put it simply. Mark DeRosa didn't even know whether or not they were going to advance. He didn't even know the rules, really. The jokes were flying that after losing to Venezuela, there's a best of 5, there's a best of 7, there's a series left to go. If you're Mark DeRosa, you're fine. New York Post even put up that post on X that, Mark DeRosa, the quote, "We're good. We only lost 1 game. It's a best of 5." It's not, Mark. It's the one gamer. It's a tournament. And you almost didn't advance even to get into the championship round when you lost to Team Italy. This team didn't get unscathed prior to the championship round, like, say, in the past. They actually lost before getting there and finished with 2 losses in this tournament, despite a stacked roster in their primes. And I understand the Padres had a pitcher at the end. They didn't want their closer to go out there. I get all of that, but that's one man. This team had bigger issues with their bat that I'll get to in a moment. But you start on the top and then you go on down. And it's not even so much that maybe if you have a roster in their prime and you have all these stars together, maybe, and DeRosa almost did, maybe you could land on a championship even if you aren't really the best for the job. Sure. But if you're not going to win, which there's no guarantee for Team USA clearly through the WBC, you want to be represented by somebody that deserves the job. That's kind of where I am. Deserve the spot. Deserve the job. It's the same thing with USA Basketball. They're almost guaranteed gold medals at this point with USA Basketball. We're a long way from 2004. It's clipping off gold medals now. They're probably going to win again in 2028. Yes, it's more competitive, and yes, other countries maybe could win, and yes, France has Wemby, and nothing is a guarantee. But while the world are winning MVPs in the NBA, they're spread out over several different countries, not just one, and they're against all the close calls on Team USA with still a lot of superstars from the United States, even if maybe not the best player in the NBA. So you want to have it be more almost guys that are worthy, ceremonial situations. Spoelstra deserves it. He's a future Hall of Fame head coach that's won championships and been to a myriad of finals. That was the case with Popovich. That's been the case even with Coach K coming from college, but all the national titles down there. You want to have the coach deserve it. You want to have the coach make sense resume-wise for people to look to, and the stars on those teams to say, you're our equal, if not above us, because we're not yet as accomplished as you maybe in most cases. That's what you want. Steve Kerr, again, another example. You want somebody that has that cachet. Jim Leland had cachet. Joe Torre, when he did it, and they didn't win, he obviously had cachet. Buck Martinez didn't have cachet. Mark DeRosa, a great baseball man. I don't want to hate on the guy in general. A baseball lifer, a baseball man, a long-time solid utility player. That's it. Wasn't even an all-star. You don't have to be an all-star to be a great manager. You don't have to be Pujols out there for the DR, but doesn't have the cachet, doesn't have the respect, doesn't deserve the spot. And you couple that with the mistakes, the mental mistakes, the in-game mistakes, how he handled the staff, how he handled the team, even separate from what he was handcuffed on with different team rules, when to use pitchers. And even what he said verbally, I don't believe that he misspoke. I think he was honest and he didn't know. A Hall of Fame manager is going to make sure they know. They're going to study that. They're going to represent their country better than anybody else. And Mark DeRosa has now done this twice. Most countries don't go to the same guy a second time, certainly not a third time or a fourth time. How this hasn't been even announced yet, and he said he wants to come back. Maybe he could come back. He's going to talk to people. That would be nuts. I get maybe unfinished business, but try the unfinished business with Aaron Judge, Bryce Harper, and those players that'll still be young enough to compete and still be in their primes when it rolls around again. Or have luck of the draw, and I think this should happen. It happens, it works in the NHL, and maybe they shouldn't be there. Well, that's another conversation for another day, whether the NHL gets enough out of it. I've argued they don't. But if they're going to do it, why not you? Major League Baseball takes the break in 2028, takes the 2 or 3 weeks, if not however long, off, and allows the MLB players to compete for Team USA in the Olympics when baseball returns. Baseball leaving the Olympics is part of why you have the WBC. Of course, Major League Baseball players did not compete in the Olympics back when it was a thing. Way back, and Team USA did win gold in 2000 without MLB players in the Olympics. But get MLB players there. If NBA players can play on the Olympic team and NHL players can play on the Olympic team, and they didn't for a decade, but now they can again, MLB players should get a crack, and it's too bad they didn't in the the 90s. A team of Barry Bonds, Ken Griffey Jr. Might have been okay and might have been able to get that job done. Yeah, a lot of steroid players, but a lot of legends in that area, and mashed with the roids. I think USA would have taken home some gold medals, but nonetheless, 2028, if you can take that break and those players can play on that team, great. You likely need a non-active manager who's retired. Okay, Mark DeRosa's not managing anybody, but still, he's done it 2 years. He's done. He's young enough, but he's done. He's not represented you as well as you should be represented. He's done. Be done with him. Be done with him. If you win a gold, you want to send it to him for a thank you, fine. Be done with him. And he honestly shouldn't even have been, and certainly for 2029 as well, for the next WBC, he shouldn't be there then either, regardless of what happens, whether MLB players can compete in the Olympics in 2028 or not. They're going to do another WBC. You just need to be done with the Mark DeRosa era over Team USA Baseball. He's done it for two different tournaments. It didn't work. It didn't bring home a gold, because if you don't bring home a gold, you're not successful if you're USA Baseball. That's just point blank the situation. And he didn't even have to manage this year's team either. And I put that in my story. Dusty Baker was managing another country, another nation in the 2026 WBC. He clearly wanted to manage. He clearly was fine with international competition. He clearly knew the rules. He clearly was a great ambassador of the sport, all over interviews with Griffey, who was the global ambassador in this thing. And he was the hitting coach 3 years ago. He probably should have been the hitting coach again, because hitting was a thing, and we'll get to that in a moment. But Dusty Baker, if he's going to manage another nation, why not managing your nation? He's retired from the sport. He's a World Series champion now. 2,000 plus wins. He's led multiple teams to the Fall Classic. He's been around the block a time or two. He is an experienced baseball manager that's going to end up in Cooperstown one day. Like Jim Leyland, he deserves it. He has a resume that garners it. He should have the job well ahead of Mark DeRosa, especially when DeRosa already did it 3 years ago to runner-up finish. If Baker wanted to do it, if he wanted to manage in this WBC, he should have been doing it this year. He should have been doing it this year. He should have been managing Team USA, not Nicaragua. Team USA, not Nicaragua, for Dusty Baker. He was there. If not him, Bruce Bochy just retired for the second time in 2025. He is a 4-time World Series champion, including winning it recently with the Texas Rangers, their first in franchise history in 2023. He ended his career on a fantastic note with this Rangers tenure after what he did with the Giants and even taking the Padres to a World Series in 98. He is still young enough, and maybe he doesn't want to manage a 162-game schedule anymore. I don't blame him. I think maybe he could be persuaded to do it for 2 to 3 weeks. For Team USA, you add a WBC or an international or an Olympic gold medal to the resume if you're Bruce Bochy with his World Series titles in the era he did it, with 3 different teams that he led to a World Series appearance, at least, winning everywhere he's been, all the overall wins. He's one of the greatest managers in baseball history right now, but that would just be an icing on top of the cake there, a cherry on top of the sundae for him. You could move him up the rankings and say he's the GOAT if you really want to argue. It's not insane to have that argument right now with what his resume already is, and if you add to it. So he should have been the guy for this WBC. Dusty Baker should have been the guy for this WBC over Mark DeRosa. And Baker was already managing the WBC to make matters even worse and more insane. But Bruce Bochy was free. He could have done this if you don't want Baker for whatever reason and let him manage Nicaragua. Then Bruce Bochy can manage Team USA, not Mark DeRosa. A utility player, a great baseball man, not an experienced manager, doesn't have the resume or the cachet to warrant the job. Fix that for 2028 if MLB players can compete in the Olympics, and certainly fix that for 2029. Again, Mike Asti here, talking WBC and what Team USA needs to do to win titles, to win another freaking title internationally, another one in the WBC after losing in the championship game to Venezuela. Mark DeRosa's second runner-up finish. Let's pull the plug on the Mark DeRosa tenure and have another manager come in with actually the resume that garners the job. Maybe one that's in Cooperstown or going to get there. There's many that are available that either already retired or going to be retired if you can't have an active manager. And if you can go active, you got many other options. If any of them want to do it, at least for the WBC, they probably can. For the Olympics, of course. Mark DeRosa, not the guy. Doesn't need to be the guy. Shouldn't have been the guy in 2026, even if you went to him 3 years ago, and certainly can't be back moving forward. But separate from that, regardless of who is the manager here, you need to take this more seriously, the way you build your roster, and just everything else that comes with it. You need to hit above all else. And I understand there's an excuse, oh, this is March. This is spring training for the Aaron Judges, the Bryce Harpers, the Cal Raleighs, whoever else. Yeah, it's also, and I understand they're not now all MLB players, a different schedule, but it's also spring training for a myriad of the players on the other countries who are MLB players. And they hit better than you. Team USA did not hit in this 2026 WBC really at all. You throw out the Great Britain game, throw out Brazil, you're going to mop the floor with those countries. You didn't hit against Italy enough and you lose. You didn't hit against the Dominican Republic and it was a controversial call there at the end. Maybe you don't even really legit beat them, but okay, so aside from that, Albert Pujols doesn't want to complain. They didn't hit either enough. You didn't hit there. You certainly don't hit against Venezuela, and all the way through, you just don't hit enough. You eventually do enough in most of those games, but you don't hit enough. You don't hit enough with that stacked lineup. And again, it's not like 2006 where it was really just Griffey and Jeter hitting and everyone else was less than themselves, but they were older. These are older players in that WBC in 2006. It's not a fair comparison. You're talking about guys that are 35 that maybe didn't hit in March against guys who are in their 20s and not hitting early on, or guys that are still in their prime years that have plenty of time if you go all the way through down that lineup. So either you need to build a team that is not just full-on mashers and full-on all-stars and full-on the name recognition players and what would be on the American League or National League all-star team in the given year, the year prior. That shouldn't be what you're doing. You should be looking for a team, meaning, yeah, you want Judge. Yeah, you want Harper. I would love if Trout got another shot at this, but who knows with his health, and his team's never good with the Angels if he can revitalize his career. If you want a ceremonial edition, throw Trout another bone after he finished it a couple years or a few years ago and couldn't continue on and lost out with that last at bat against Ohtani. But you have a myriad of options beyond just the superstars that would fill out a great roster, meaning you need to build a team that has guys that can hit home runs for sure, but also guys that can get on base, guys that can move runners over, guys that play great defense, guys that steal bases. How about that? Guys that steal bases. Doesn't have to mean they have 30 home runs and 30 steals. Maybe they're just a stolen base threat. I'll throw one out there that's really just a stolen base guy, and that's really all he does, but he's going to continue in Major League Baseball because of it. It's Victor Scott. He's actually a WVU product, and I'm not saying him because he's a WVU product, and I'm a WVU alum and cover the Mountaineers. I'm saying he is a stolen base phenomenon. He's a 30 stolen base guy early in his MLB career. He was swiping bags left and right at the minor league level as well prior to getting up to the Cardinals. He can't hit that well. Okay, he's going to hurt you offensively. He's bottom of their order, and they even say this is why he's up there. But maybe you don't start Victor Scott. Of course you don't, but you bring him in late in games. You make him that threat on the base pads. If you want to preserve your stars who just have 3 at bats instead of 4, okay, because it seems like they don't take that 4th at bat seriously anyway. Maybe then you put him in, and if he does get lucky and gets on, he can run all around the base pads, or he can get in for them and replace them in that game if you need it in a close game. Or maybe you need their bat still in there, but you can work him in there some other way. You need players like that that are not true on legit all-stars, that are not going to the Hall of Fame, that have a specialty that can really fit the bill. He's just one name I could throw out there. But you need to have a team that fits. You're not building an all-star team. You're building a championship team for 3 weeks that can beat the best of the best around the world. They actually need to take a page out of USA Hockey's book, out of the men's team's book, because they were heavily criticized for not having some high-level goal scorers, not having Robertson, not having some all-stars that also maybe deserved off their resume or how they're playing in the NHL to be on the team. And Bill Guerin and company basically said, we're going to have some of them. We can't have all of them. We're not building an all-star team. We're trying to build a quality team here. We need grinders. We need penalty killers. We need guys that have speed. We need guys that play great defense. We need two-way players. We need guys that can be unselfish and aren't worrying about scoring every single time they touch the puck. They had those players. Jack Hughes is not a Hall of Fame player right now. He's a good, solid player, but he's not perfect. He's not the greatest in the world. And he was able to score the golden goal and beat the Connor McDavid, the Nathan McKinnon, the all-star team that was Team Canada. That Team Canada is more comparison to Team USA in terms of baseball. They're just 2 all-star rosters that had future Hall of Famers on them, and they really probably weren't built sound enough to win the gold. And they didn't. Team Canada lost in the gold medal game. They ended up silver, and Team USA baseball-wise loses in the WBC final. So you got to build a team that makes sense, a team that necessarily doesn't have all-stars, but makes sense, that is led by a manager with cachet that deserves the job, that makes sense, that's not going to say things that embarrass you, that is going to know the rules, that is going to press the right buttons and make the right moves within those games. Simply put, that wasn't happening in 2026. You could argue that didn't happen 3 years prior. It hasn't happened enough throughout the history of Team USA in the WBC. And whether or not MLB players are part of the 2028 Olympics or not, the WBC will keep on happening. And every time USA is there, they have to win gold. It won't happen every time. But this string of silvers, way back to even missing the championship round, that has to all end. And the way to help it end is doing this right. Gone is Mark DeRosa, and maybe not as many stars that are going to swing and miss and just full on strike out left and right. Aaron Judge is going to be there despite having a rough championship game. He was over for 3 Ks, but you can't have every all-star there. You need to build it right. And I get it's March. If we want to take this seriously too, MLB is doing this. The restrictions of, hey, this pitcher can pitch in this situation, but not here, and only if you're in a lead and with Miller, and no, that needs to go away too. And I get preserving the arm. I get not wanting to get them hurt for this, but that's not being said in the NHL. That's not being said in hockey. That's not being said in basketball, even though it's their off season. But those players get basically no off season. If they play in the NBA playoffs, they have the regular season coming up in the fall, and then they do the Olympics. They pretty much get no off season when they go. And yet they realize we can't just do the all-star thing. That's how they won bronze in 2004. We have to, or a lot of players didn't want to go there too. That was the other problem. You need all the best players that can go, that make sense on the team, to want to do this for Team USA baseball. You need the right skipper to lead them as manager. You need the right infrastructure, and you also need to maybe not just have it be a full-on all-star team. Simply put. And again, those things can be fixed. This program can win again. But the Buffalo Bills string here, the back-to-back runner-up finishes, granted one to Great Japan and the other one to Venezuela, it's not getting it done for us in America that have experienced better recently, that thought this would be a golden era internationally, and know that it's our sport, it's our America's pastime. Yeah, there have been great players around the world throughout the history of the sport, but collectively, it's still ours, and we should be doing better than we've been doing. And one title in all these WBCs doesn't scream that you're doing enough, and there are ways to fix this moving forward. And number one, before you do the roster, Mark DeRosa has to go. He just has to go. And having Dusty Baker manage another team will always bother me. If he wanted to manage in the WBC and he's retired and he'll do 3 weeks but not a full season, give him the job. Give him Team USA. I would like to have, and Dusty Baker's not perfect for sure. He's not the greatest manager of all time. I'd rather see Bruce Bochy if I'm going to rank him. Bruce Bochy had a better career in MLB, but Dusty Baker deserved it way more than Mark DeRosa. Let's let a World Series champion manager do this thing and not a life utility player who's a good baseball man, has been said, but that's not enough. That's not enough. I don't believe Mark DeRosa misspoke. Okay. The blunders were on and off the field for Mark DeRosa, on and off the diamond. And I don't think those would happen as often with the legit Hall of Fame managers, even if you're not guaranteed to win a title every single time. That'll do it for this WBC edition of Mic Drop here, made possible by the Believe Network, available everywhere you get your podcasts, and of course on Sirius XM as well. And I'm not hating on Mark DeRosa, a good guy, a good baseball guy, but come on. You didn't misspeak. Maybe you were handcuffed, but you're not the guy. Let's switch up the managerial spot. Let's take this freaking thing seriously. Let's take back the sport that is ours. Yes, I'm an American. I'm going to say it's ours. And let's show who we are, and more the flexing off the mega home run from Bryce Harper. That got to be more of a thing in 3 years or in 2 years. I would definitely like to see MLB players in the Olympics. That would be really, really cool. And while it doesn't always benefit the NHL directly, if they're going to do it, you should do it. If they can take a break, you can take a break. And we will see if it benefits Major League Baseball or not. This was a great WBC, I was locked into it. I know many of you were locked into it. The ratings do show this was great and even better than in years past. Really cool for Venezuela for sure. Really, really cool for them, what that nation and country has been through for sure. Really, really cool for them. One title is good enough for them to remember forever. But Team USA, the one title in 2017, is not good enough, and we need more. And the runner-up finishes have exposed the clear issues around USA baseball.